Yo, what's going on everybody? Today I'm just gonna share with you a small little trip report my friend sent me just yesterday about his experience with Salvia divinorum. And I will note that this is a different friend than the one who sent me the Christmas Salvia trip report, if you remember that one. It's gonna be great, and I do hope you all enjoy. Let's get into it. Gender, male. Body weight 170 pounds or roughly 77 kilograms. Substance, Salvinorin A via Salvia divinorum. Dose taken, approximately 25 milligrams of a standardized 20x extract smoked in one full inhalation and held for about 25 seconds. I'm a 170-pound male, and this was the most intense experience I've had with Salvia. I had slowly worked up to this strength over time, so I understood that it would hit quickly and fully, but even with that preparation, the force of it caught me off guard. I measured out about 25 milligrams of 20x extract on a milligram scale and checked it twice. I had a sober friend sitting quietly in a chair across the room. The lights were low and steady. I was sitting upright on my bed with my back against the wall so I wouldn't tip over once it started. I packed the bowl tightly and used a torch lighter to make sure the heat was strong enough to vaporize everything efficiently. I inhaled slowly but deeply, cleared the bowl in one pull, and held the smoke in. Around 15 seconds into holding it, the air in front of me began to ripple. The edges of objects vibrated and the entire room took on a faint waviness. By the time I exhaled, the transition was already in motion. Before the visuals fully took over the room, there was a sort of distinct internal click, almost like a switch being thrown behind my eyes. It felt mechanical and decisive. My thoughts narrowed. The ordinary background hum of being human receded instantly, replaced by the sense that I was about to be repositioned within something immense. The right side of my vision started sliding sideways, as if the entire room had been sliced into vertical panels. Those panels began folding backward one after another. Each fold revealed yet another bedroom. The motion felt synchronized and precise. A strong lateral pulling sensation grabbed my body. Gravity seemed redirected. My torso felt stretched and sectioned into layers. I became aware of multiple versions of myself arranged side by side, each one slightly delayed from the last. With every turn of the environment, another version of me clicked into alignment. There was a brief but powerful moment where I felt as though I had crossed a threshold that could not be uncrossed. I felt like I was stepping past a boundary that defines ordinary consciousness. I sensed that what I was entering operated by different rules entirely. The idea that I had smoked something felt distant and increasingly irrelevant. My awareness of having taken anything faded rapidly, and my focus narrowed completely onto the rotating structure. The room flattened into a two-dimensional plane and then dissolved. Depth disappeared and was replaced by a wide, open field of solid green and yellow. The colors were thick and uniform, filling absolutely everything. Shapes moved within that space. They felt integrated into the environment, like components of a vast system. There was a sense of being carried along by something larger. I felt like a segment on a conveyor mechanism sliding forward in sync with repeating structural patterns. Memories appeared as thin slices arranged along a circular arc, each one snapping into place with mechanical precision. At one point I perceived what felt like the edge of the system. It was as if this rotating arc extended far beyond what I could see, implying that the portion I was experiencing was only a small section of an infinite mechanism. The repetition carried a quiet authority, as though this process had always been running whether I was aware of it or not. My sense of being a separate individual thinned out. I experienced myself as part of the pattern itself. At one point I was convinced I had always been embedded in this rotating framework. The human perspective felt like a narrow window that had briefly opened and then closed. There was a steady calm throughout the experience, almost instructional in tone, as if I was observing the internal scaffolding of reality. The rotation accelerated. I felt layered horizontally, as though my body had been divided into stacked segments sliding over each other. My friend's voice reached me faintly and stretched across the field in a distorted way. Sound seemed to sort of bend along with the visuals. Another striking element was the sensation of inevitability. Each cycle of rotation felt predetermined, as if every fold and alignment had already occurred countless times before. There was no sense of choice involved. I could but participate. It felt less like I was moving forward through time and more like being repositioned within a repeating structure that existed outside of time entirely. Time felt expanded and dense. The looping structure repeated over and over with slight variations, and each repetition carried a sense of inevitability, like I said. There was no resistance within me at all. Eventually, the motion began to slow. The green and yellow tones softened, and the mechanical sensation faded from sharp rotation into a gentle drift. Weight returned to my limbs in stages. My hands felt distant at first, and then gradually reconnected to my awareness. The outline of the bedroom began forming once again. As depth returned, I noticed a faint afterimage effect trailing behind my movements, and when I shifted my head, the room seemed to lag by a fraction of a second before snapping into alignment. It felt as though my perception was recalibrating, reassembling the layers that had been peeled apart just moments earlier. The walls regained their depth and the furniture took shape. My friend in the chair came back into focus. I blinked several times and felt my body settle against the wall behind me. I asked what time it was and learned that only about 6 or 7 minutes had passed since I exhaled. Inside the experience, it had felt vastly longer. My heart was beating quickly but steadily, and my muscles felt slightly shaky like I had just stepped off a fast-moving ride. There was a lingering sense of detachment for another 15 to 20 minutes, I'd say. If I stared at the wall, faint ripples would pass through it, and my thoughts carried a reflective, slowed quality. In the immediate aftermath, there was also a subtle emotional neutrality, a clean, almost clinical clarity. It felt like I had been shown something structural rather than something personal. The intensity was organized, even elegant in its precision. As I sat there processing it, I became aware of how complete the immersion had been. There was no partial overlay of effects on top of normal reality. The shift replaced my entire frame of perception. It felt structured and purposeful, with repeating geometric logic running through it. In the hours afterward, fragments of the experience would resurface in flashes of sorts. If I closed my eyes, I could briefly sense the sensation of being divided into panels and rotated along that massive arc once again. It left a strong impression of how flexible perception can be when certain receptors are activated. What stayed with me the most was the physicality of the transformation, the sideways pull, the layered body sensation, and the way that space folded with consistent rhythm. Later that night, I felt mentally clear but contemplative. There was a residual sense of having glimpsed an underlying structure behind ordinary awareness. It demanded respect. The brevity of the peak contrasted sharply with its depth. Even the following day, there was a faint echo when I reflected on it, a reminder of how rapidly and completely perception can be reorganized. It reinforced for me that this substance operates with an immediacy and structural force unlike anything else I have ever encountered. I would only approach that amount again in a controlled setting, seated, measured precisely, and with a sober sitter present. The onset is immediate, and the immersion is absolute. For something that peaks within minutes, it delivers a level of structural integrity and intensity that stands apart from anything else I've ever experienced in my entire life. And that is going to be the end of his story. Pretty detailed, and had a great deal of post-trip insights included as well. I know you'll see this, pal, and let me just say I loved the report. Like I said, I do hope you all enjoyed hearing it as well. If you did, a like and subscribe would be fantastic stuff. Drop a comment letting me know if there's something specific you'd like covered next, and why don't you pop on those post notifications while you're around so you don't miss out on anything new I drop. If you'd like to share a story of your own for me to read on the channel, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram with the same name in PFP and submit them there. Stay frosty, stay curious, and as always, stay safe out there. And with that, I will of course see all of you in the next one. Peace.